Welcome back to the Dahlem Realty Company Podcast, where we bring you conversations with the innovators, entrepreneurs, and industry leaders shaping the future of business, real estate, and our community. Today, we're diving into one of the most talked about topics in the world, artificial intelligence, and how it's transforming industries far beyond Silicon Valley. Jim and Charlie Dahlem will be joined by Todd Creek, CEO of AIBES, AIBES, which is a team of AI business engineers who turn cutting-edge AI innovation into practical business wins. Todd brings 25 years of executive-level experience in finance, accounting, and operating systems, all hard-earned in the fast-moving world of energy and commodities trading and brokerage. He has also designed and teaches an executive education AI course at the University of Louisville Business School. Todd's here to show us where AI is today, where it's headed next, and how those shifts translate into real-world impact for commercial real estate.
Well, we're here today with Todd Creek. Todd, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Todd.
We appreciate you coming. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence and how that touches business and particularly real estate. And so, Todd, can you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure, be glad to. First off, thank you for having me, guys. I greatly appreciate it. I started a company called AI Business Engineers 3 years ago, basically when ChatGPT came out and was kind of the big bang of AI and became the household name that it is today. My background, though, is primarily in commodities trading, and the connection there is that commodities trading has always been involved with machine learning, deriving prices and trading value, looking at various things from market indicators such as weather and all that, driving energy and commodity prices. So I've always kind of been around it, but made it my professional career exclusively just within the last 3 years.
Interesting. Very interesting. Let's jump into real estate. Can you tell us a real world example of an AI solution that you may have been a part of in the commercial real estate space? Maybe something that worked and delivered some results?
Yeah, I think, what you're really seeing now is what I would call typical intelligent agents. And I'm going to talk more about agents in a moment. But an example would be taking non-structured data, such as PDFs, leases, contracts, emails, sensor data, all of these things that are not typically in a structured format, and turning that into something that you can extract information back through natural language. So think about this, right? We've done this where we've taken a customer who had just tons of leases, right, that were 35 pages and or hundreds of them, right? And we're able to take that into a database and put a natural language layer, i.e. like a ChatGPT, on top of it, where let's say it's a Sunday afternoon and you have a question about one of those leases. You can ask that question in natural language and it will extract an answer for you in real time right there. Whereas previously, you might have to send an email to an analyst or someone on your team, and they would have to go pull the document and find that. Now you can get that. Again, the key point, though, is in natural language, where you can ask it and it understands your syntax, and it doesn't have to be very specific and tailored like in the old days where every word had to match. It was all kind of keyword matching. We've kind of evolved from that. And that's a perfect example of where a client was able to gain a lot of efficiency. Now they can get real knowledge at their fingertips when they want it in natural language.
So they could actually speak into the computer and say, does this tenant have an exclusive for groceries?
Sure, that's a perfect example. Or tell me when I can raise the rent. When is this contract expiring? What's our situation on waste hauling? You name it, right? Because you think about all of the information that is available within a contract. And I'm sure your existing ERP systems or whatever are capturing the salient points, right? Okay, here's the rate. Here's the term. Okay, then that's all great. great. Some of them aren't even capturing that, by the way. But there's a lot of other detail in there that is hard to kind of capture in one system consistently. And by having a natural language layer on top of that, you can almost ask any question that you want, right? And it can extract that information for you.
Good. So there's a lot of buzz around AI technology, like computer vision, NLP, machine learning. Do you actually, are you seeing any of this move the needle in commercial real estate?
Well, yeah, I mean, it has. I'll give you another example of just vetting opportunities as some base level stuff. Okay, what I mean by that is, let's say you get numerous opportunities sent your way via email, and some of those, probably 90% of them, might be garbage, but there might be 10% of something you really want to look at. So we had an example where we were able to ingest those emails, set up an AI agent that would understand your criteria, could evaluate those opportunities, right? And then pre-qualify them and then pass along those that met your guidelines to a human to then say, okay, this is worth looking at. So the time that it saved, and those you may never have looked at before, or maybe you have a junior analyst looking at those, but obviously the time that's saved there, now you can focus on the ones that really matter, is immense. So that's one example.
That's interesting, yeah.
But does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Or was it?
Yeah.
That's
pretty interesting.
So delve into a little bit further, an agent. What an agent
Yeah,
is.
let's talk about that. So, you guys have all seen ChatGPT, right? And that's where you ask a question and you get an answer. Now, this is very different, though. It's key to note from, let's say, a Google search, where when you go in and you Google something, it retrieves an answer for you. And typically, it's, as you know, it's a list of things from which you choose, right? In the world of what they call generative AI, it is actually generating an answer for you. So it's not a list of things that were retrieved from which you have to decide, which makes sense. It's giving you an answer. So that's generative AI. AI agents take that well beyond where you are giving an agent the ability to take action. They can go out and grab information off the internet. They can extract information from your company data. They can make decisions autonomously. If you so choose, I'd advise keeping an agent in the loop. But that's where the world is headed, is toward these what's called AI agents. We're actually in the era now of what they call agentic AI, which is the era of AI agents. If you want me to, let me back up for a moment, if that's cool. I think that this will help kind of frame this a little bit. Think of AI as your new operating system, and you say, well, what does that mean? If you look at legacy, the way we've dealt with computers, we have told them what to do, okay? With AI, we're going to get to a point where we tell it what we want, so the desired outcome, and it will decide how to accomplish that task. So this is a paradigm shift, if you think about it, and that's where we're going, okay? So what you'll end up with is a world where you will come in and your screen will be there, or screens, and you will communicate in natural language, whether that's via voice or text, what you want. Behind the scenes, you still have computer programming that has to happen, and that is happening. It's still a computer. You still have to talk to it. But that natural language interface is the ultimate abstraction. And what do I mean by that? You think about when Microsoft came out with Windows, right? And we were all able to see these cool icons and graphics and grab and drop them and place them in. And that was an abstraction. It was an easier way. Behind the scenes, there was coding that knew how to interpret that, right? There's all these coding languages, which are merely abstractions, right? What is the ultimate abstraction? It's natural language. So if we can communicate in natural language, and behind the scenes, this agent is taking that natural language, converting it into a task, and writing the code to accomplish that task, that's the world we're living in and we're headed towards. And these agents are going to assist us as humans in everything that we do. And in fact, ultimately, we're going to end up in a place where we will manage a team of agents. Now, it'll be very similar to having an employee. You've got to monitor them and measure them and have guardrails and all of these things. But that's the world we're headed toward. But we can back up too and talk about kind of the more introductory tools such as ChatGPT and all of those. But the natural language is the biggest thing, that whole abstraction that has led us to where we are today, if you will, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot to get your brain around.
It is.
But it's, if you think that the internet was really earth-shattering, this is going to be mind-blowing, really, for people to get their arms around and really understand this and actually to use it. And I know people are using it right now, today. But I know our company, we're just scratching the surface on it. Yeah.
Well, you and a lot of people, and when I say that, as far as this agent era, that's happening out in California, right? Yeah. It's happening in some of the bigger companies, but there are many things that we can talk about right now that are very practical, but that's where we're going. And when you look out into the future and you say, okay, where are we going to be in 2 to 5 years? That's where we're going to be. And the time is very compressed. So when you talk about looking out in the future, don't look out 5 to 10 years. You can't. Because it's going to, no one can predict what it's going to be like that, I can tell you right now, because it's moving so fast. So you have to take a shorter time frame and look at it between like 2 to 5 max. But the agentic world is where we're headed, with AI being your operating system. But we can talk about, we'll talk more about that. But I'll tell you like some practical examples in commercial real estate that you could do today. Okay. Let's talk about like customer support and tenant support. That's just a natural language communication, right? Where you have loaded in, let's say, your policies, your procedures, how you do business into this model, i.e. agent, that now can communicate with your tenants in natural language. So before, you might have a call service, or you might have an old automated process, which weren't very good, quite honestly, but now they really are. And when a tenant calls in with a question or a maintenance ticket or whatever, that agent will answer the call. They will sound like you. They will know your mannerisms, your policies, how your tone, right? You can set your persona of that agent, and they can then represent you in the manner that you want. And what does that do for your company? Well, responsive, client retention, all of that, and they work 24/7 and show up on holidays and are never sick. Mm-hmm. So that's just one example of where you would use a natural language interface and a typical chat bot to bring value in commercial real estate.
Okay.
As from a tenant standpoint, retention standpoint.
Okay. So real estate pulls data from everywhere. Leases that come from demographics, sensors that detect people walking around.
Yep.
In a store. How do you go about integrating all of that into a usable system?
The one thing that no one talks about in AI, which is actually the hardest part, is what I call the whole data wrangling, and you're just like you've always been told. A computer or any system is only good as the data that you feed it, because that is the knowledge base. Okay, so how you do it is, one, you have to get a partner that knows how to wrangle data. Okay, there are companies that do that. There are companies that specialize in real estate that do that. Companies like my company do that. We run it through what we call an AI factory, and it's getting your data cleansed and AI ready, which is a process and a technique so that when you hand it to AI, it's ready. It's all, and this is the hard and messy part, I will tell you, but that is your value as a company. But because everyone's going to have AI technology, what they're not going to have is your proprietary data. That is your edge, right? And also being able to gather other data sources and embed that with your data to make real-time decisions, whether that's, on valuations, forecasting, all of that, right? But getting your data, having access to it, getting it AI ready is a process. There are companies that do that, and it's paramount. Both your structured data, things like out of your financial accounting system, which is kind of very structured, which is kind of table stakes, all the way to getting reviews from your tenants, your let's say, sensor data, camera data, like, because talk about visual models that can monitor what it sees, right? To then interpret that to say, oh, you know what? We see people at 10 o'clock gathering in our parking lot every night for 30 minutes. What's going on there? Maybe we should do something before something really happens, being proactive. Those are examples of unstructured data that you typically have not had access to. And one of the beautiful things about the advancements in AI, it is bringing access to what was previously inaccessible, the unstructured data, in a kind of a usable form.
So, let's talk about that. When you start talking about our accounting and integrating our systems and that sort of thing, I mean, you're going to have a data quality issue that you want to make sure that you have. The agent, I guess you got to put the guardrails around the agent to know what you consider quality. Is that what you're doing? And then you got a privacy issue. All of a sudden, how do you put the walls up so that your privacy isn't getting out there, in the marketplace? You have those firewalls anyway right now, but when you start having an agent going out and hitting all this data in the ether, are you exposed?
The answer is yes.
Okay.
So I will say this, that, AI, anytime that you implement AI, is a business initiative. It's not just a tech initiative. And that's one of the biggest mistakes people make. And when I say that, you have to incorporate governance. It affects your culture and all of those things. But specific to privacy and data security, it is it's paramount that you have an AI policy as an organization as to, hey, you over-communicate with your employees on AI. Tell them what they can and can't do, systems they can and can't use. I'll give you an example of probably what's happening in 90% of the organizations. They're going out and their employees, they went on the free version of ChatGPT. They're like, this is really cool. We can do a lot with this. And then they go to work and they're like, hey, I've got this Excel spreadsheet or this PDF. I'm just going to upload it into ChatGPT and have it answer questions for me. Well, what you've done in that instance, you've made that document available to, in that case, OpenAI, who's the company that owns ChatGPT, for their training data. You don't want that. Obviously, you've exposed private data, right?
Right.
And that's what you talk about by not having a firewall or not having a policy. And that's happening today. Now, there are ways to stop that. One, you could say, we're going to have a ChatGPT available to our company. We're going to get the enterprise version of that, and that does prohibit them from using it to train. There are ways to opt out of it, even on the free version, but they make it hard, right? They don't want you to opt out of that, right? That's why it's a free version, right? If you have the paid version, then it defaults to not using it for training. But there are mechanisms to put in place just for guardrailing your data in using things like ChatGPT. But it's paramount that you set a policy and that you understand how these platforms work. And like if you're in Microsoft 365, they have Copilot. It automatically has a ring fence around it, right? And it does similar things to ChatGPT. It's just one example. But when you're dealing with your company data, okay, that is your edge. It's more valuable than ever. You want to make sure that you have the right advisor, the right structure around that. And a lot of times that means you don't want to necessarily just be sending it over the wire to, let's say, OpenAI or ChatGPT.
Right.
You want to kind of have that structured through what's called an API, a connection that a professional can help you do.
Okay.
You guys may not know this, but there's a tie to Louisville, Kentucky, as it relates to the initial right to privacy in the United States. In 1890, Louis Brandeis wrote a paper, and was published in the Harvard Law Review, that basically set the stage for all privacy laws. It was called the Right to Privacy, and he co-authored this. And this was before he ultimately became a Supreme Court justice. So when people talk about data privacy today, they always, that was the origination of privacy laws right there. So Louis Brandeis is considered kind of a forefather of privacy. At that time, he wasn't thinking AI. He was talking about
Not at all.
Obviously, what the courts could see and access, what the newspapers could publish at that time. That's what he was talking about, right? And he was like, hey, you shouldn't have the right to just publish anything about me. I should be able to keep my identity and my information very private. Now think about the world that we're living in, right? All of these, we talk about these models. They're all trained on data. That's all they have to know about it. It's no different than we as humans, right? How do we learn? We learn from our parents. We learn from what we read and what we see. We see things, we hear things, and we watch. These models are trained the same way. They're giving a set of data. Now, the key thing is they have a very almost unlimited memory, which we don't. We're humans. We can only remember so much. But that's how they learn. So how this ties into privacy, where I'm getting at is all of these models that were created by, Google, Facebook, they took all this data they could find, publicly available, anything they could get their hands on. Now there's a lot of lawsuits out there saying, well, wait a minute. That was my article. I'm the Wall Street Journal, or I'm a Condé Nast that owns a bunch of publications. So there's a lot of lawsuits going on right now saying, you didn't have the right to train your model on my data. I think it's ultimately going to get settled, but it's only going to solidify the value of data and how that is an asset. It is the crude oil, if you will, driving that engine. And the one thing to remember, we're out of it. You're like, what? We're out of it. Because we've only been capturing digital data for probably the last 30 years, that, real good digital data.
Right.
And by the way, 70% of it is garbage and duplicates and repetitive. So now, and we've run through it all.
Yeah.
Now we're producing new data every day, but that's, so for it to learn, it just needs to be fed data. So we're actually creating synthetic data. But anyway, I digress. I thought that
That's interesting.
Lewis Brandeis
Well,
connection was pretty cool.
Well, and for listeners that don't know, so the University of Louisville School of Law is the Brandeis School of Law.
Yes.
So,
yes.
And he is buried, and he and his wife are buried. They were cremated and buried in the wall at the
front door.
The front door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. I didn't know that fact.
Yeah.
That's very cool. So you ask about valuations for businesses. Let's think about how we could use AI in that regard. And look, there are tools out there that are on the open market, right?
Right.
And that you can do, or you can develop your own, and your edge is going to be your data, as I've said before. So machine learning is all about predictive analytics. It's all about taking all of these data sources and doing a prediction based on probability of an outcome, whether that's forecasting your net operating income, forecasting a valuation, all of the forecasting a cap rate, and trying to do that quicker and faster than the market, so you can have an edge, right? So that's what machine learning is. And that is kind of the legacy application of AI. All the talk today has been around generative AI, which is the natural language question and answering, and it gives you an answer, right? As opposed to just retrieving. It actually generates an answer. Could generate a picture, could generate graphs, could do all this stuff. But old school, and I call it old school, it's not really, machine learning is that whole predictive analytics. So what you can do today is, let's say you have a model that you've given it your criteria. Your agents can go out there and pull real-time data from various sources. It can then grab your data, and it can give you predictive valuations based on your portfolio, and do sensitivity analysis, and all in real time, and not having to wait for an Excel spreadsheet and some analyst to take 2 weeks to do it. It can do it in seconds. So as far as valuations, that's where it can bring value. It's just the overall speed and access to information. And then the models have gotten so much better and are so powerful. And then you add the natural language layer on top of that. I mean, it's really incredible. And the natural language layer has allowed people like us to kind of communicate with these things, which we never had before because we didn't know how to code.
Right. And you could even use, putting the model together. When you're making a site selection criteria, I guess you could begin to analyze and predict demographic trends based on other information in the country on how the demographics might grow and or change in an area. Is it fair to say that AI could help you with that? Maybe.
I want to make sure I understand your question. You just ask me one more time. So
let's just say you're looking at an opportunity. You're looking at buying a shopping center, and you're anticipating that, based on the growth that I'm seeing here with these apartments that are already here and the residential that's already there, there's some ground over here. I can anticipate based on other data in the region that my demographics might look like this. My shopper might look like this. I might have this many more shoppers in the marketplace in 5 years from now.
Sure.
Based on
no
this.
question. That's what machine learning is all about.
They're going to look like this, so I need to maybe try to track that tenant who's going to serve that population.
Yes. No question. What you explained is exactly right, and it can do that, right? Helping you profile a tenant based on the demographics and information that you're available, so that you know who to target, right? So,
and that's a sales point when you're talking to a tenant. You're talking to a tenant and saying, "I've done this analysis, and this is what this is going to look like in a few years here. You want to be here."
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right. When you look at AI, it's like electricity, meaning that it will touch in everything. And when you talk about that, that's driving revenue, right? Mm-hmm. we talk a lot about operational efficiency, things like, okay, it can help me scan my invoices, OCR, then take that data and interpret it without me having to touch it, and then put it into my accounts payable system, and help me process, invoice it on. And it can do all that. And that's great. You reduce cost and it drives efficiency, frees your employees up to do more things that are strategic and intellectual demanding things. But we don't focus enough on what you're talking about, which things that, we're not talking about just driving efficiency and saving costs. How do I drive my top line? How do I drive revenue? And things like what you just described as value add for my tenants and showing prospects, hey, this is what this area is going to look like in 2 years by using machine learning and creating you can create these what I call kind of synthetic environments that can, based on this data and where it's going, predict what that's going to look like. Yes, I mean, that's a very good example case of where machine learning and it's really deep learning, which is just the more advanced version of machine learning, is applied.
Okay.
So with that, I mean, this is going to be the stupid question of the day. So if it can do all of that, as far as managing properties and managing buildings and whether the common area and maintenance, that kind of thing, this kind of automation can actually really help expedite this as well. Would you think?
Expedite what?
Expedite, maintenance items that you have to, routine maintenance that you have to check on, or that you have to do every single year, or true or false?
Look, true. I mean, let's keep it down. Let's look at it to its most basic, what you should be doing today to where it's going. You think about my example where you load in all of your leases right into call it a model, and it has the model has access, or the agent has access to this model. Well, it could alert you to say, hey, you know what? We haven't done maintenance at this site in so long, and just basic alerts. That's kind of 101 stuff, right? But if you think about where the future is headed, it's real time, almost like a digital concierge. And you can do that today with sensors and cameras to say, okay, or even drones. I mean, let's talk about the future is robotics, where that's, where it's going to go, where you will ultimately probably have a robot on site that will be monitoring your facility, will alert you when it sees, takes a look at the facade and sees a potential crack or what have you. Those are just examples of
parking lot lights out.
Parking lot lights are out. You can do that some today with just sensors and cameras, right? And the advancement in computer vision is these models can look at that camera, those pictures or that video, and quickly extract where the issues and opportunities are. That's the advancement. So yes, it will help you back to maintain your building more real time, more reactive, and that will deliver value to your tenant by knowing, just sensors, right? That's available today. Where and I know that a lot of people don't have them, but let's say your HVAC system, and it notices some issues with the site, how it's running, and all of a sudden, someone you send someone out there to check it, and they were like able to replace this part that cost you maybe $500, as opposed to if you let it go, you would have a $70,000 HVAC system change. So sensors are and that applies to various things, not just your HVAC, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All various equipment. So those are things that are happening today, using AI.
So all this costs money to do. So how would someone actually measure success or ROI with AI in commercial real estate?
Yeah, you have to always start off with what's your use case, what problem are you trying to solve, and AI is not always the answer, and I say that as an AI guy. So in many cases, what people think is AI may not be. It may be just some basic type of automation, or what's called RPA, robotic process automation, and things like that aren't necessarily AI. So it starts by defining the problem. But the return on investment, you have to look at it as you should be able to get your return within 12 months. We're seeing uplift on most projects we do. We see a return on investment within 12 months on most of the projects that we do. And I would tell you that start small. Don't try to boil the ocean. Pick a pilot project and make sure that you align your team, because it is a holistic endeavor. Don't make the mistake of saying, oh, this is just a tech initiative, hand it off to your tech folks and think it's all going to work, because it won't, because it impacts too many things. But yeah, and I would also say, when measuring your ROI, you have to, the quantitative things, you can pretty quickly measure. The qualitative things you have to take into account as well. Meaning, what impact does this have on my employees? If it's freeing them up to do more challenging things where they bring value there, they're happier because they're not doing these mundane things that they quite honestly don't enjoy doing. Build that into your value calculation when calculating your return on investment. So, point being, not all quantitative, also measure the qualitative value that you get from that.
Well, typically, if you've got something that somebody doesn't enjoy doing, that means it's something they usually put over on the side of their desk and they get to it sometime later, which means the problem's not getting addressed as quickly as you would like it to. My father always said, look at what's laying around on your desk and you'll figure out what you don't enjoy doing and go find somebody that's good at it, because that means you're not good at it. And so that's one piece of it. Let me ask you another question.
Yeah, that's good advice.
So let's just talk about, like you said, a pilot project. Let's just say we wanted to take all of our leases and load them up into a model, okay? So that we could go and, as Jim said earlier, do we have an exclusive in this shopping center? That would determine whether or not we should even continue talking to this prospect anymore, because they might be excluded from being in the shopping center. Or let's just say we wanted to look up something in a lease. I don't know, just whatever it is in a lease. And quickly extrapolate that. What you said, you would build a model for that, and the second part of the question is, what else is out there besides ChatGPT that isn't going into the ether? What other programs are out there that people could engage and know that they've got some guardrails around it, that it's theirs? Does that make any sense? I'm an AI.
Well, look, and you talk about one of the challenges with all of this, right? It's the knowledge gap, and that was why I started AI Business Engineers, or AIBES, because I saw the knowledge gap. And I also went out when I started this 3 years ago and talked to heads of technology. And what I realized very quickly is, well, they don't know anything about this. Yep. Nothing. It was no discredit to them. Smart people. My point being that it had moved so fast and things had just at a pace that unless you were doing that full time, you couldn't keep up. So that gave me the courage, if you will, to realize that I was on the same in the same pole position as everyone else and start this. But that aside, let me that you put a lot in that question.
Yeah, well, I'm just stumbling around trying to form a question.
But I want to unpack a couple of things.
Okay,
I want to unpack a couple of things. Let's talk about ChatGPT. Okay. It's what everybody knows. They were the first one to roll it out commercially, although really Google's really the pioneer, quite honestly, in all of this. And they're probably the best. There are many ChatGPT options out there. Okay, Google has one called Gemini. A company called Anthropic has one called Claude. Claude 3.7. And Microsoft has their Copilot, but what are these, right? These are just general intelligent agents, if you will, or platforms. What does that mean? That means where you, as a user, can go, you can ask a question, and it is pulling information from what's generally available in the public, or you can give it context by providing it your information, meaning you can upload a document or a picture, whatever. You're giving it new context or new information, okay? I refer to these as general purpose models, okay? Our large language models is the broad term, although they do more than just language now. My point being, you could ask it to create an image for you, and it will create an image, create a picture. You can ask it can do like videos. There's all the things it can do or whatever. But my point is there are a number of options out there other than ChatGPT. Okay, so that is just the customer-facing side of all of this. But what we're really talking about here with regards to companies like Dahlem's, your company, and all these other commercial real estate companies out there, you're not going to be using that interface for what you want done, okay? That's cool it can help you in day-to-day if you want to have questions, and just like you would use Google, right? It's kind of serving that purpose. It helps you with just general questions day-to-day. Those models fueling that chatbot is what you're going to want access to. Okay? When you create your own platform, your own models, you're not using, let's say, ChatGPT. You may be using the model behind it that was created by OpenAI, which is the company that started ChatGPT. Google has a bunch of different models. By the way, there are thousands of models out there. These aren't the only ones. And models are trained and designed for your specific use case or need. Okay? So
that's what you do. That's kind of what you do.
That's what we do.
Yeah,
What we do at AIBES is we would go through and say, okay, what is the use case, right? What are we trying to accomplish here? And that's where it always starts. Right? You have to say, what are we doing? What are we trying to accomplish? And then how can we do this leveraging AI, right? And try to almost come at it from a clean slate. But my point is the foundation of this is typically choosing the right model that's in that tech stack, because that model is kind of your brains, right? It's kind of it's what reasons and thinks and allows you to have that natural language communication and it's the brains is the way you need to think about it. But my point here is you're not going to be necessarily using that ChatGPT interface that you guys see when you go out there and log into ChatGPT. Now, behind the scenes, it may be the same model, but it's not that interface, if that makes sense. So the key takeaway here is this. You want to make sure that when you do something like this, you have a partner that can say, okay, here's the right model, what we need to be using, because in real estate, it will be one probably tailored to real estate, right?
Right.
And that is trained on real estate data. And then you bring your data in, because that's kind of like your own. Think of it like this. I'll give you an analogy. GE produces engines, right?
Right.
Produce engines. There are a bunch of companies out there that use GE in their cars and airplanes and forklifts and whatever, right? Use GE engines. These companies like Google, OpenAI, Meta, they make the engines, right? You're going to lease that engine to produce your car, your forklift. All right. That's the way you kind of need to think about it. They're these general purpose engines. You just got to make sure that you get the right engine for your use case. You may not need a huge jet propel a jet engine, if you're running a forklift.
Yeah, you might need a lawnmower.
You might need a lawnmower engine, right? And so getting the right engine that's tailored to your needs is paramount and part of all of this. And I know that was a long answer to your question.
It just distilled it down to something that made sense. It was a crazy question, and you made it make sense. My question makes sense, so thanks.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I hope I answered the first question, but I wanted to break that down because it is hard, it's confusing, and there's a lot of layers to this, but I think people just assume, just Chat GPT. That's not going to bring any value to you. I mean, it'll bring value, okay, just like Google does. Where the value is your data plus X, bringing in all of that data and doing that predictive analytics, building that automation in it, right? Saying, okay, when you get this information, what do you do with it?
Yeah.
And that's where the agents come in. That's the next step, right? That's the thing where, okay, I've got an answer. Now I want this to take an action and go do something. And you're going to have this agent network that talks to one another, and you might, this agent that goes out and grabs data. This one then ingests it. This agent then does the valuation. And all of these things that back to my initial thesis is, you tell it what you want, and it goes and does it and comes back to you with an answer, right? And so anyway, that's where we're headed.
It's amazing where we're going. Have you had a client yet where you had to actually convince them to do a project because they didn't realize the kind of value it was going to bring to them? And could you have an example of that?
Well, I would never convince someone, because if I have to convince them, it's going to fail.
Yeah.
Back to, it's got to be a business initiative, and it has to start at the top. And if the CEO isn't convinced,
it ain't gonna work.
It's not going to happen. So I wouldn't even start it. I think it's usually the other way around, where people have, because it's obviously everything you read, right? So everyone has FOMO. What am I missing? And I get that. So in many cases, it's, you don't need AI for what you're doing. In that case, so I don't see many cases where I'm having to convince people to do AI. It's more about, hey, what you want may not be AI. That's kind of saying this might work better. And then just on the AI side, understanding what that means and how that involves. It's not just a tech initiative, that type of thing, and taking into consideration governance, security, and all that other stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Todd, thank you so much for coming in here and being with us today. Really appreciate it. Where can people find you if you're interested in learning more about this or actually using your services?
Yes. So you can find us at AIBES, AIBES.ai. So it's an acronym for AI Business Engineers. And so just again, AIBES, AIBES.ai.
Perfect.
You can find us.
Great. A lot of information here.
Yeah.
A lot more. Well, I think we could sit here for several hours and squirrel down into this thing.
Look, I would encourage everyone to get online, play with ChatGPT, try Perplexity, by the way. We didn't even talk about that.
You put me onto that. I've used that a bunch now. It's good.
Yeah. I never get on Google anymore. Google's an amazing company, and they have a bunch of great models, by the way. And they have Gemini, which is their equivalent to ChatGPT. But Perplexity is great for, instead of doing where you would normally go Google, use Perplexity. It gives you an answer, but it also then cites the source. It's just really, really good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. But thank you guys. I greatly appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks. All right.
If interested, Todd will be leading an executive education program at the University of Louisville called AI Essentials for Business Leaders on September 17th and 18th. You can register online at the University of Louisville Business School website.